The January 27th, 2021 meeting of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Master Plan Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. Emails need to include your full name and address in the subject line in order to be read as part of the record. Now, in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. The meeting can be viewed on Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or live streamed online at westboroughTV.org. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So, thank you all for being here tonight. Fantastic turnout. Good to be back together. We have a little bit of new business to attend to, something that's not on the agenda. We have a new member joining the Master Plan Advisory Committee, and I'm not sure that Jenny is with us tonight. Let me see, we've got some folks in the waiting room here. I'm letting Amber, should we let Jim Robbins join us? Probably. Lakshman, Josh Lee, just admitting them. And is Jenny Silverberg here tonight? Jenny, are you out there?
Lester, it's Mark Silverberg.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah, she'll be on shortly. She just had to bring my daughter somewhere, but
okay.
I'm not sure she's officially joining tonight. I think we're looking for a representative. Yeah, I'm not sure what they decided, so I'm going to let her speak for herself. So.
I see. Okay.
Wait on that.
Well, I was asked to unofficially welcome her to the team as a person on the cultural subcommittee. So we'll do that when it's appropriate. I believe the planning board needs to officially appoint her to that role, but there has been agreement, at least among the leadership team, that we welcome her to that role. So we'll do that when it's appropriate. So. For me, we'll just go quickly through the agenda and then get stuck in. So we've had our call to order. We're tonight going to discuss the second public meeting, which obviously under the current COVID circumstances will be held remotely via Zoom. We've picked February 18th for that date of that meeting. We're going to discuss the agenda and format. We're going to revisit the community ambassador list for outreach purposes. So as a reminder to all of you, this is where we committed to being, to engaging certain stakeholders throughout the community to make them aware of that meeting. And we're going to look to just discuss the marketing of that meeting to encourage the broadest and as diverse as possible attendance as we can. We're going to review the mission statement that has been redrafted, incorporating your feedback from the last time we gathered. We're going to look at the public school outreach done by Viggy. We're going to look at do some breakouts tonight in subcommittee deliberations on draft goals and actions, and then cross-inform one another's actions. A lot more on that will be explained when we get there. And then we'll do a report out from those breakout sessions on the draft goals and actions. We'll take any questions and hopefully wrap up at 8 p.m. Okay. So, you know, for me, the master plan process under these current conditions, I think for all of us perhaps has been And there is Jenny joining us now. So just let me admit her. So Jenny, are you connected and on? Give her a second to connect. So yeah, under the current circumstances, the ability for us to meet and interact and draw off one another is obviously hampered, and we are doing our absolute best in the format that we're given. And I must say I'm extremely encouraged by the flurry of activity in the last couple of weeks. And mostly I was really, my spirits were buoyed by the work that that Viggy did in reaching out to our youth in town in the schools. And I know you were all shared his excellent summary of that, as well as the complete spreadsheet. And we're going to give him some time in a little while here to summarize that for us. But for me, it was the boost I needed, because it, by and large, the responses really embraced the mission and the task of this advisory committee, which was to, irrespective of the circumstances we're in, think about the future and think beyond our current circumstances to what we want the town to be. And I would say that they really embraced that and did a beautiful job of it. And it gave me a super boost to say, you know what, we can do this. We're going to have a fantastic document as a result of this if we embrace it in that spirit. So thank you for that. And Viggy will give you some time to summarize that for us in a little bit here. So the public meeting number 2 is going to involve obviously a welcome and some introductions that I will do. We're going to, in order to engage the participants, right? And our vision for this is that hopefully we get 100 or more people joining this virtual meeting via Zoom. So we want to embody into the session as much interaction as we possibly can. So we're going to use some real-time polling. VHB will coordinate some polling about who's in the room and get some of the data. We actually did that, if you recall, in the live meeting. If you attended our first public hearing, we had the clickers and we did a poll, and then we were able to broadcast that data and get a really good sense of who's in the room and what our demographic splits are like and that sort of thing. VHB will do an overview of the project status and schedules. Jim Robbins will present the vision statement, and then the subcommittee spokespeople will present their draft goals and actions that we're hopefully going to hone tonight and through the rest of the week. Then we will use the Zoom breakout group discussions as a way to put people into a series of small groups in which they discuss various topics. So again, it's if you can imagine the room, if you were there in the high school cafeteria for the first in-person public meeting, we're trying to replicate that in the Zoom environment for the second public hearing. And so they'll break out. There will be rotations through a number of topics, and then we will provide time for report back and capturing the input that we get. And then VHB will post the next steps, and we'll adjourn that public meeting. So you've all experienced, at least if you attended that in-person session, the polling. And what we will do tonight, so part of the session tonight is going to be actually to put you into breakout rooms by subcommittee in the Zoom environment so that you can experience what that's like, and we can get a little bit of practice in facilitating that sort of meeting. So the main room, of course, like we're in now, will be everybody, and in the breakout room, we will be presenting and seeking input on goals and actions, identifying additional actions. They'll be led by us, Master Plan Advisory Committee members. We need a facilitator and a note taker in every room. And for tonight's exercise, we'll have the same thing. The attendees, along with other Master Plan Advisory Committee members, will be randomly assigned to breakout rooms, and the subcommittee reps will be rotated between the rooms. And then meeting notes will be taken and shared in real time from those sessions. So for outreach, we really need to promote this event and try to get as broad a participation as we can. You may recall, although we haven't referenced it in some time since that first session, that we have an ambassador outreach database, which is a spreadsheet that lists all of the stakeholders and community groups that the advisory committee identified in our early sessions. And it asked for you to commit yourself as an ambassador to various of those groups. So if, like me, you've forgotten who you committed yourself to, Kristen will be sharing that database, and we will remind you of that. And then we might have some, we might also have some ambassadors that, or groups that do not have ambassadors. So we'll be asking you to revisit those and look to step up and reach out to these groups. So if you saw what Kristen did there, if you're following along, she went to the documents page on the westboroughmasterplan.com website, and she's going back there now. And we're trying to, oh, sorry, this is in the advisory committee's tab, and it's in the advisory committee toolbox, the subcommittee toolbox down at the bottom, and there's the advisory committee engagement ambassador spreadsheet. So that's where you can go in and take a look and see where you signed up and who you would be expected to reach out to. You also received today a announcement sort of poster that will be used to promote the event. And this poster or announcement card is something that can be emailed out along with the information and the link. It contains a QR code, which will link people directly to the Zoom meeting for that public meeting. So any of you who have enjoyed a meal at a restaurant during the pandemic have probably, accessed your menu using a QR code. Just hold your camera up to it. It populates a link at the top of your camera or your phone, and you click on that and you connect to the meeting. So just another way to hopefully encourage people to attend and join the meeting easily. So we're certainly hopeful that these posters or leaflets will be distributed both digitally and physically. So we want you to be able to print them out for yourself, and the planning board will create copies as needed if you request them. But we really want to reach out. We want to reach out to all of our different housing locations throughout town. We would love for somebody to step up and do a slip under the door or into the mailboxes of places like at Arrive or at Park or Windsor Ridge, etc. And take in whatever COVID protocol we have to follow, get posters posted or leaflets distributed to all of the demographics across town. And then, of course, we want to leverage our personal email contact lists and those of the organizations to which we are ambassadors. So if you're the ambassador to one of the churches, for example, you will reach out to the appropriate person and ask that the meeting be published through their newsletter, through their email blasts, and that we encourage them to share that on to anybody else. So we would really like a full court press from the advisory committee to to promoting this public event and to attract as many people as we possibly can. So any questions on that as a quick summary of our intentions for the next public meeting on February 18th?
Lester, this is Jim.
Yes.
This is Jim. I just learned that the week of February 18th is school vacation week.
Well, excellent. So we might be revisiting the date for the public meeting. What is the opinion on that? Is that a absolute detriment, or under current circumstances, might that be a good date to have it?
Lester, this is Amber. I mean, I think you'll get a mix of people that will be home and I think we find that people that even if they're, traveling, if they've decided it's of interest to them, will also, take a break and Zoom in. It gives people flexibility. I mean, I think we found some good attendance at lots of meetings. I think you'll have people that would still attend. So I think you should steam forward. I'll push out a bunch of communication on it starting tomorrow. I wanted to wait till the meeting. And so, we'll do what we can to let people get it in their calendar.
Thank you very much for that. Amber, is anybody else out there that feels similarly or different on the date?
With the advent of Zoom into all of our lives, the fact that people might travel or be on vacation or otherwise, they can still take time out for a Zoom meeting.
Okay, so thank you for that, Pete. And so it sounds to me, Jim, like we're going to proceed with that date. You okay with that?
I am, thank you. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because it was brought to mind.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so next on our agenda is confirmation of the vision statement. And for that, I will turn it over to Jim Robbins.
Thank you very much, Lester. And I want to start by thanking everyone for coming this evening. I know that things are still upside down. Hopefully this won't continue forever. Hopefully we'll get out of this before we finish the master plan process. But I really appreciate everyone who's volunteering their time and showing up here tonight, whether you're a member of the town staff or you're a resident of Westborough. Thank you so much for coming. So what I'm going to do is briefly read through what we brainstormed at our last meeting. These vision statements that are here that you're going to see on the next couple of slides are your words. These are exactly what came out of the last meeting. And I ask that you take a look at these and consider them. If you think something is inappropriate or wrong, or you want to add to something or edit something, make note of it and wait till we're finished going through the vision statements, and then we'll tackle anyone that has a question or an edit or wants to change something. So thank you so much. So our vision statement simply begins with talking a little bit about the town. Incorporated in 1717, Westborough is a New England town between Boston and Worcester that is home to a diverse community with a strong sense of pride and a can-do spirit. This is underscored by its commitment to equity and inclusivity, as well as widespread civic engagement and participation. Our people are what makes Westborough great. Together, we have reflected, explored, and confirmed our vision for the future. We are a community that will be balanced. We measure new development against our ambition to preserve our historic and cultural heritage, as well as the unique and important natural resources that support biodiversity and contribute to the scenic character of our surroundings. We are connected. Our sense of community permeates throughout our inclusive social, educational, recreational, and cultural activities and the many spaces in which these activities take place. The human qualities of Westborough are continually evolving with the increasing diversity of our collective backgrounds and abilities. Westborough is desirable and accessible. Our attractive neighborhoods offer exceptional schools, confidence in public safety, and a range of housing options with a focus on increasing affordable opportunities. They are great places to live across lifetimes. We are thriving. We are a hub of economic activity at the crossroads of the Mass Pike, I-495, and Route 9 within the metro region. This is thanks to our business, both large and small, the latter of which are the backbone of our vibrant, mixed-use, and historic downtown. We are multimodal. We are served by a range of efficient local and regional transportation networks, including linkages to regional commuter rail and our expanding network of pedestrian and biking facilities, highlighted by our trail network including the much used and treasured charm bracelet. We are sustainable. Our policies and actions reflect our commitment to continually lessening our environmental impact, locally and globally, as well as our focus on assuring public health and wellness. Finally, we are trusted. Our town government provides innovative and high-quality municipal and educational services by means that are consistent with its strategic mission and values. So that was what this committee brainstormed. I ask now if there are any questions or comments.
I think that looks, this is Jody, Jim.
Hi, Jody.
Yeah, hi. I think it looks great. It seems to me there's been a little fine tuning since the last time I saw it, and I sort of see it speaking to everybody's work on this advisory committee. So I didn't find anything in there that I would change.
Thank you. Anyone
So I'm
else?
not seeing any other hands raised. And so I assume that generally
Christy has her
people
hand
feel
up.
pretty
Christy's
good
got her-
about it,
Christy?
and that if they don't, they will share in writing their suggestions.
Christy had her hand up.
Oh, Christy did. Christy, you're on.
Can't hear you.
Christy is off mute, but we can't hear you, Christy.
Jen, did you have your hand up? Jen Kirkland?
Oh, no, I was just going to tell you that Christy was trying to talk.
All right, thank you.
Christy's still, I'm guessing you can hear us, Christy, but still having trouble hearing you. So.
I think she's dropped off and is going to re-enter.
And reconnect. Okay, so we will grab her comments then when we see her rejoin. Here she comes. I will admit her and we'll give it another shot.
Can you hear me?
Yay, there she is. Yes, we can hear you now.
No,
Thank
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated how it partnered with the strategic plan, especially talking about the trusted. So I think I think it speaks really well to the master plan, but also incorporates the strategic plan, which I think is important.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Again, as Lester said, if you have any thoughts and you're not prepared to share them now, but you do in the next couple of days, please forward them to the rest of the committee, to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so before we do this, we didn't put a placeholder slide in there, but we had on our agenda the opportunity for Viggy to tell us a little bit about his process, to thank him again for the extraordinary work that he did reaching out to the youth community in the schools. So Viggy, do you want to tell us a bit about that process and what you learned from it and how we can employ it?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I just like to tell everybody about, what the survey was, why it was done and how it's structured, and then, what it really means for subcommittees and how they can use it. So as a general background, over the past couple of months, I teamed up with Superintendent Bach to reach out to the high schoolers and middle schoolers in our town with a survey. And on the survey, we asked a few questions related to, students' vision for Westborough's future, because we wanted to incorporate, the youth committee, the youth vision in the master plan as well. In my experience, my first engagement with the master plan was back at the public meeting in February of last year. And I noticed that, there really weren't a lot of students there. And I thought there would be a tremendous opportunity to include more students and their own visions in the town because, as has been said before, the future is being planned for the younger people of the generation, right? So it's worthwhile to have input from that younger generation. And So as I mentioned before, it's structured as a Google Forms survey, and a few of the questions relate to the downtown area. You know, if you would remodel the downtown, what would you do? How could we improve traffic conditions in Westborough? How do we keep Westborough more sustainable? And there are other specific questions like that. We also left general space for suggestions, like any suggestion a student had, they could put it down in the survey. And so those survey responses are all in the spreadsheet, which everyone should have gotten linked to that document, that summary document. And in the process of reading over the document and the responses, you know, I think one of the biggest commonalities is almost a lack of connection between the town and teens. Almost, in my experience, and I'm sure other people have experienced as well, the interaction and relationship between the youth and the town is very, you know, bland a little bit and like kind of transactional. A lot of teenagers kind of wake up, they go to school, and they maybe do a few activities, some of which are in different towns. And they come back to Westborough, sleep, and then do it again. So it's kind of, Westborough is almost like a place to live rather than a place to be. And I think we can change that. So most of the responses for the actual survey were centered around teens' need for a better connection to Westborough. A lot of teens were looking for a hangout spot downtown. A lot of teens were looking at how can we bring smaller businesses, you know, more locally owned businesses to create those hangout spots and things like that. And so what does this mean for subcommittees, right? So besides specific responses targeted towards other subcommittees like the traffic subcommittee or the sustainability and climate change subcommittee, on the document that everyone was sent, there are specific spaces for each subcommittee with a summary of the responses from teens that pertain to that subcommittee. So I would encourage each subcommittee today in the breakout rooms or otherwise to incorporate, you know, at the minimum, like one action item onto their list of action items, or at the very least, you know, revise some of their action items to include some of the voices of the teens and, you know, direct it more towards the teen input as well. And, you know, I think that could have a pretty large impact. You know, I know a lot of students were super excited to even have the opportunity to give their suggestions. And I think that if we are able to incorporate it into the master plan, you know, we can even send a response email back to that student body saying, hey, look, your responses were actually incorporated in the town's documents and will be incorporated and implemented in the future. And we can even incorporate the public meeting poster into that email as well. But in the future, it will just really increase student engagement to have students realize they can actually change the future of their town. And so, yeah, I think it would just be amazing if we could incorporate these suggestions into our action lists.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Let me throw it out to the committee. Does anybody have any comments for Viggy? Did you review his work? Was it helpful? How did you incorporate it? Do we have anybody who would like to say something?
Yes, I actually reviewed
Gary?
at least the parts of it that were forwarded to me, which was the cultural, natural, and historic components. And I found it very useful. And I want to thank him for the input that we've got, and we will be discussing it.
Excellent, Gary. Thank you. So your committee found it useful in the cultural, historical aspects of your work, and will incorporate that feedback. Anybody else?
Lester, Jim Ball.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, I thought this was really, really fascinating, Viggy, actually. You know, we've talked a lot about trying to keep young people around, number one, but also creating activities, but engagement. You know, as a business person, having served in economic development and on planning board, trying to figure out how we can, you know, I think some of these small businesses make a lot of attempts, but don't last in town. And so, you know, I think it's important to try to get, you know, to take this feedback deeply, and in some of the areas downtown, you know, figure out a way that the economics work for these small businesses in certain areas to actually bring these things so that they can have successful businesses and also provide the things that the kids are looking for. And, I'm sitting here thinking about a couple of spaces I know in town that may be up for sale soon, or other things that, should the town actually consider aggressively looking at downtown locations to convert to community centers that can bring, I think of all over here in Bangkok, there's the kids all hang out at the mall, and there's food courts, and there's jump parks, and there's movie theaters. They're all in the same place in the mall. And it's where it happens to be where there's air conditioning too, which is part of why they go there. But are there any locations, and is it a reimagination of the major mall downtown? Why is the name escaping me? Downtown Crossing, and or in combination with some other the downtown properties where there's it all comes together in one place. I've seen it here, and I think that is something worth trying to figure out. There's a lot of small shops in big places. So instead of a burger joint or some of the other things that he mentioned, can we put a lot of these things together so the economics work for the small businesses that also support the skate park? As I bought my daughter a new skateboard yesterday, as it so happens that we're going to a skate park for this Friday. I just think we have to think about a common area somewhere, and can the town spend the money or private donations to make that happen?
Great. Thank you so much for that. Anybody else got a hand raised, or?
Lester, I have a comment. I don't want
Jim?
to monopolize it, but if anyone else wants to go first, I'm happy to let them go ahead of me.
You're up, Jim.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you, Vicki, for all the work you did. I read all your spreadsheets before you consolidated to your much smaller report. Thank you for all the effort. And there was a lot of information there to distill. I wanted to make two comments. First, regarding my subcommittee, climate change and sustainability. There were a couple comments there that I thought were really informative. So one of the things that we've looked at in our subcommittee is educating businesses about the advantages of making their buildings energy efficient and changing over to energy efficient heating systems and electric usages. But one of the things you pointed out is we need to be focusing on our residents. We need to educate regular families about how important climate change is and how it will affect Westborough and the families in Westborough in the future. And we didn't think about it on the micro level, and your fellow students have done that. So thank you. That's something we'll discuss in our breakout group. Another thing that was mentioned is encouraging the purchasing of electrical vehicles and having more electric charging stations around town. Those are great ideas. It's things that we've talked about in a cursory fashion, but we need to incorporate that also into our actions. On another note, outside of my subcommittee, all the talk about making the downtown more vibrant, I think that those are well heard. That's one of the major foremost goals of this master plan in general. And one of the important things to doing that, making Westborough a more exciting place, is getting housing downtown. So if your fellow students live downtown, and I see many, many high schoolers walk to and from school going through the downtown every day, I think if they live in the downtown, there'll be a greater demand for the types of places that you want to see hangouts, and businesses will understand the base that's there. They will create those kind of places. So Viggy, thank you so much. You open our eyes to the future generations of the town, and that input is vital to this master plan. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jim. And Kara, you had your hand raised.
Yes, as I read this feedback, which is awesome, Vicki, thank you for doing this. I am compelled with my housing hat on, but also as the Director of Youth and Family Services, and also as the chairperson of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the town, thinking about all the comments related to social justice and inclusion of marginalized populations, and wondering sort of curiously how those issues might be more explicitly brought into this master plan, and how outside of the master plan we might bring this to other parts of the town strategic plan, or just incorporate this into other other work. In other words, Vicky, I think that this feedback from the students extends far beyond the bounds of this master plan. And I think it's really informative across all of the work that we're doing in town.
Yeah, beautifully put. Pete, and then we'll begin to move on.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks, Vicky, for the great work and so forth. I did have one, and I think Carol was getting to it in some of her comments. The thought that occurred to me was this type of input and dialogue between the town government and the school shouldn't be a 15-year event. How do we create a structural channel where that dialogue is going on all the time? And we're enriched by that on a continuous basis. And as you know, I'm working on the climate action plan and the sustainable Westborough. I'd love to have that type of a bridge established. So I'd be looking for structural answers to how we get that set up.
Wonderful idea. And I think that addresses, Viggy, your concern that it's a more regular and open dialogue, and the participation is there. Thank you for that, Pete. So many things that strike me that connect through this work that Viggy, that you've done. One thought is one way that we can honor and respect and benefit from those who participated in your survey would be to engage them now in the promotion of the upcoming meeting. And you've mentioned that that could go out to them, but perhaps you could think about a way to invite them to do a mailbox stuffing campaign, a leafleting campaign, as well as a digital campaign for getting the word out. We would love to mobilize that army of interest. So if you can think about that, and we'd happy to brainstorm that with you, that would be great. I'm also always struck, I'm constantly trying to reframe my experience for the positive and think about, some of the things that we might have learned from this pandemic and the benefits. And it always strikes me as one of them will be to, sorry, we've got somebody entering the room here. Oh, it's our building commissioner. So one of them is the global perspective that Jim Ball brings to us by dialing in from Bangkok, right? I mean, I just love it. Here we've got a reference to what makes a vibrant youth circumstance here across the other side of the world. What can we learn from that? How can we embody that and inform the process? So I think that's a gift from this process. So thank you again, Viggy, very much. We'd like to build on what you've created here, and we very much appreciate the valuable contribution to the plan. So with that, we will move to the next phase of tonight's meeting. And just to give you a little bit of signposting around this, what we're going to do is Jeffrey is going to assign us to breakout rooms. And hopefully what will happen here is that on your screen, you will see a little message that'll pop up, and it'll say, please join me in meeting room number 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. Click join, and your screen will change, and then it'll reemerge, and you should be in a room with members of your subcommittee. So, and then once you're there with your subcommittee, you have two tasks. One is to review the draft goals and actions that you have in process now of your specific subcommittee. Discuss those, agree on those, suggest any changes that you might want to have made to those. Your second task is to review the goals and actions of the other subcommittees into which you might have some sort of interrelated connection or need. So over the course of the last few days, we actually had some nice email deliberation around suggestions from, say, the Sustainability Committee to incorporate into the Economic Development Committee's draft actions certain items. And so it might be that the Public Health Committee might make a recommendation that something be incorporated into a goal of one of the other subcommittees. So those are your two tasks. So again, this is also a trial run for what we will experience at the virtual public meeting on February 18th. And we want our Master Plan Advisory Committee to get familiar with that experience so that they can ensure that we have a successful breakouts in the public hearing. Again, you will appoint a facilitator and you will appoint a recorder, somebody to take some notes about what occurred in that meeting. So those notes can be submitted back and made part of the public record, and can also be shared when we do our report out after the fact. So before we actually started the official meeting, we had a comment from one of our members that was concerned about a goal or an action prescribed in another group that could have a negative effect on their work interests. So I'm going to challenge you to ensure that we hear that concern, but to reframe it as a positive and reframe it as an opportunity that we, by virtue of this open forum of deliberation, have been able to catch something. So I think that we will respect the work that's been done and ask, again, respectfully for contributions across platforms. So after the 20 minutes is up, Jeffrey will initiate a reconsolidation to the entire group. So on your screens, you will see a little message box pop up, and it'll say you will be rejoining the main group in 59 seconds, and it'll start counting down. You can use that minute to wrap up your discussions, or you can activate, if you're done, you can agree you're done, and you can click the leave button and you will join the main group, and we will see you back here for for meeting joining the whole group. We believe that we have anticipated that there are certain subcommittees tonight that might be understaffed, and you may have been joined with another subcommittee. So if you find yourself in a breakout session with people you don't normally deliberate with, introduce yourself, embrace them, and process your work as you can see fit for both subcommittees. I see that Jenny did join us a little while ago. Jenny, welcome. Great to have you here as part of the Cultural Committee, and looking forward to your contributions. So Jeffrey, with that, I would invite you to send us to our rooms.
Great. Lester, thank you so much for that. Looking forward to hearing you on the back end of this conversation. A reminder of who's in those breakout groups. Land use and economic development are clustered together, and public facilities and transportation are clustered together as well. Based on when people join the meeting, I had set this up a little bit early, so I've got about 90% of you that will go off to those meeting rooms. What will happen then is I'll invite others to go to join your partners in those meeting rooms again. So if you don't join right away, that's okay. I'll put you into those rooms within about a minute or two of it starting as well. So with that, I'm going to open it up, and then make sure you look for that button, as Lester said, join that meeting room. If you don't get one of those, don't worry. Within about 60 seconds, I'll put you into the room where you belong. Have fun.
Hello.
Hey.
All right. Everybody clear on what we need to do?
I think so.
So I think what I'll do is I'll just pop up
policy in that area. And I don't think that's fair.
or representatives of both here, and we're discussing some of the goals and actions that are being drafted in consideration for the master plan. So,
Lester, sorry to interrupt. Could I add on quickly to Justin's comment?
Sure.
And he brings such an important point of view here because he deals with these issues, obviously, on his board. I think that with regard to in this process, you know, when we actually implement, one of our questions that came up in our discussions was, and Fred brought this up, when do we actually clarify who does this and when this work gets done versus our goals and actions? And when do we get down to specifics? Because, you know, to Justin's point, I wrote down encourage versus limit, you know, I mean, and it's a great way of putting it. At some point, this work has to get done, and how do we, you know, maybe this is indeed framing the future work. I hope and that's my interpretation of the plan, and that's what we're trying to get done here. So perhaps I don't have to worry about that now, but I just want to bring that up so I understand the ultimate.
I think it's an important distinction to make, and I think that the reason that the planning process has been divided up into 3 steps is that the commits stage, right, when we actually say, yeah, we're committed to getting this done, is when we start assigning responsibilities of departments or potential responsible parties to get things done. So I think while we're still a little bit in the aspirational phase, and I think that what we need to do is understand thematically what the participants and contributors to the vision for Westborough are asking for. And then we, at some point, are going to have to get down and find how we harmonize those interests with the interests that are appropriately raised by Justin for, you know, existing property owners, et cetera, and what role zoning as a tool can or can't practically play in achieving that vision. So that's the way I would put it. I would still consider that we don't necessarily want to exclude the aspiration from our goals, and at this point, but if that becomes, you know, if we have a reality check at some point as a result of doing the work, then that will come out of doing the work. But I think the vision is what we should capture. Christy, do you have any thoughts about that?
I agree with you in terms of zoning. I think that it could come out that it makes sense at some point in the future to do some zoning around the downtown. But I think when we talked about it in our subcommittee, we talked about it being more of an economic development committee responsibility or economic development coordinator responsibility in terms of coming up with ways to incentivize businesses to locate downtown or potentially to move out of downtown.
Focused on technology. Our thinking was more around technology than the science part of climate change. It's like, what can you do people, I think, generally know that climate change is real and it's happening and so forth. It's the call to action. What can you do about it? And some of the technology is very new, and it's a change, so people have to be educated about it. So our idea was to have energy fairs and have a continuous discussion on that. I think every 2 years is a good cycle. I don't think we can have webinars where we have deep dives on certain topics, but our idea was to have it.
So one of the things.
Hey,
that the
Jim, if
town-
I could interrupt real quick, it's Jeffrey. I've invited the Westborough TV to your breakout room. Just want to let you know that they're on as well. So maybe say a quick hi. And so they'll be joining you for a few minutes.
Hi to the folks at home. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Pete, that's a good point about energy fairs. The town annually holds an Earth Day project and celebrates Earth Day, and they've had cleanup efforts. One thing we might do then is collaborate with Earth Day to have sort of a family teaching session on what individual families can do to take steps to reduce climate change.
I think that's a good idea. And it's a cadence that people are familiar with, the Earth Day, waste cleanup.
Tim, are you able to, since you're sharing the screen, are you able to edit under number 4?
This is my screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What would you like me to
I
edit
would
in?
say participate in the town's annual Earth Day program to educate the public on individual efforts to address climate change.
Did I get it?
I think you did.
Yeah. Pete, I have a quick question. Back on the first 3 goals, we had talked about that a lot of these are mimicking what the state is going to try to enforce. You and I have talked about this before. Has the state put out how they will enforce us to drop these emissions and so forth? Have there been any guidance on that?
So the Energy and Environmental Affairs Executive Office issued their 2030 Clean Energy and Climate Plan.
Mm-hmm.
And are you familiar with that?
I believe I think you shared that document with us, didn't you?
It came out December 30th, actually, last.
Oh, I probably have not seen it then.
It's a brand new document, and it's basically the set of programs, plans, some of which are intent, because it requires legislative action.
Mm-hmm.
It includes, let's say, carrots and sticks. It includes programs of incentive to incent people to make change, and in identification of places where there will need to be new laws passed, like a net zero building code. Or one, for example, was that by 2035, there would be a ban on sales of new gasoline and diesel vehicles in the light duty category.
Yeah, I did. Well, I heard that. Yeah, I heard about that. That's kind of what was making me think about this.
That gets into the press, but this Clean Energy and Climate Plan also includes
the Community Preservation Act. If that comes through,
right, that would be
the kind of action
that
would make this a sustainable function. Right. The other thing that I think would be important for the Municipal Housing Trust for us is that it would use the master plan as a basis on which to spend their money, essentially.
Yeah. Hey, Hazel, it's Jeffrey. I just want to let you know I've invited Westborough TV to your breakout room. So they're watching you live right now. You might say a quick hello to the folks at home.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Great, thanks.
But I think that's an important thing, is that the whole point of the trust, or we would like to see the trust use the suggestions under the master plan as a basis to spend their money.
I think they will.
Yeah, and
I
I don't
think-
know that we can, if that's our jurisdiction, just because we're not, these goals don't have to do with the trust, it has to do with the master plan, so.
Right.
Well, yeah, but we want them to use the master plan as a basis for spending the money, essentially.
I know, but can we include that desire in these goals?
I think that's a goal that I don't see why not. Because I mean, you can combine the sustainability idea along with the using the money to promote the goals under the master plan.
But you would put this as like an objective, not an actual goal itself, right?
Right. Well,
An action step.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could get behind that too.
Yeah, and I think we could word it in a way that was like, it is an action step on the part of the master plan to ensure that the trust is using this plan as a reference.
Right. I mean, they've taken the action because they've set the trust up. Now, the question is what the trust is going to use the money for. And as far as we're concerned, since it's a housing trust, we want to see it follow, or at least look at the goals under the master plan as to essentially set up some of their policies or whatever.
Maybe like say, encourage the Affordable Housing Trust to utilize this plan
Yeah,
as a
basis for
basis
Yeah,
or
as a guiding reference.
yeah
for future affordable or future housing development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the action step would be the encourage the trust to.
Right.
All right, we
Yeah,
got 2 minutes left. We probably go to goal 3.
Okay, let's go to goal 3. For those watching at home, it says plan future residential developments in consideration of and with respect for their impact on the town's facilities and services.
Well, it's certainly important.
Mm-hmm. It's honestly, it's sort of not a very smart action step. I mean, smart as in smart goals, like it's not very concrete. It's sort of vague. Like, I don't know how exactly you would enforce.
The problem is it's vague because the master plan does not plan future residential development.
Right.
In other words,
but I like it as a guidepost. Like, I don't know exactly, it doesn't give us concrete direction on what to do, but it is sort of a friendly reminder. Not unlike,
I think maybe we're trying to encourage future residential developments to respect their impact on the town's facilities and services.
Right.
I mean,
it can't hurt.
I think the 2 objectives they have are fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
I think 2, maybe if you're ranking them in terms of importance, I think 2 should probably be ahead of 1.
Yeah.
But,
to me, I guess I see them more as friendly reminders than action items. Important reminders, and I think they should be there, but
I mean, you could make 2, well, you could actually make both of them into real action items if you kind of just reworded them a little bit. So like the first one, change review standards for subdivisions to address demand on infrastructure and services.
There we go.
2, you could say, prepare a future residential development desirability map.
I love it.
I mean, that's what the product would be for that effort.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Before we get
participants to rejoin the main room here, which will happen in the next 30 to 45 seconds. So just hang tight for that.
All right, welcome back. So
I feel
how
like
many
we
of you-
took a bus back.
Yeah, so we had a couple of comments in
Average.
our group. One was just a little bit like Harry Potter. We've somehow gone through, a flew through Diagon Alley, and somebody else said it's been a while since I've been told to go to my room. But hopefully that went okay for you. Do we have any feedback from anybody? Was it good, bad, indifferent, horrible?
It was good. Actually, I thought it went very quickly,
Great.
much
Yeah,
faster than
time
I
flew.
expected.
I want to compliment that it worked. I was on a Zoom call about a week or so ago that had several hundred people, and they dropped 100 going to the rooms and dropped the 200 coming back.
Wow. Okay. So we've succeeded, Jeffrey. Congratulations. All you have to do now is scale it up 10 times, and we'll be good for the 18th. Okay, so we're back in a large group, and so what we'd like to do is just ask you for some volunteers to go and tell us a little bit about what happened in your room, whether there was any productive conversation around editing or changing your goals, and we won't necessarily try to capture that tonight and make any changes on the fly, but if you did have some changes, what was the discussion about? What would you change? And get that feedback then to the leadership committee so that can be incorporated. Who would like to start?
Lester, can I just make a suggestion that everybody mute again? I think when we came back, we weren't muted, and we should probably just all mute again.
Good idea, Mark. Thank you.
One thing too, Lester, I'm sharing my screen with the goals and the actions, but if one of the subcommittees has their own document that they want to share, just let me know and I can unshare and they can do that.
Okay, and since you've got that up on the screen, why don't we use the order of the committees in your document to guide the conversation here? So transportation and mobility, who is facilitating that breakout room? And
So this is Chris Pant. I'm not going to go over what's on the screen. I'll just make a comment on a discussion we had, and anybody from the group feel free to chime in. But I think what we identified is the importance of not only looking at our singular group, but looking across, as you guys try to get us to do here, at the other ideas from the other working groups. And that's an example of that. And it's very simplistic, but when you look at transportation, there's a lot of discussion about sidewalks and bike lanes and road improvements. But to get some of those things, you have to do things like cut down trees and take up open space and change aesthetics, maybe change a scenic road to a not so scenic road in somebody's eyes. And so there's some balancing act that has to happen to make sure those things are, the compromise is agreed to that accommodates, whatever the town's interested in. And so my point is that under transportation, there's a bunch of ideas to do things like that, like bike lanes and sidewalks. But I imagine, although I personally don't know, because I didn't study this stuff as well as I should have before the meeting, but there are probably some other comments about more trees and some things. And I'm not saying neither can happen. I'm just saying that there is, in some cases, a conflict that has to just be addressed, and then, a solution that needs to be figured out. And if anybody from the group wants to add on to that, feel free.
anybody else from transportation and mobility? Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. I think that we might see a theme emerge here, and that is that in considering one action, it has ramifications across other interests. And the real challenge of realizing a vision worth, worth aspiring to is going to be, and I'm going to use it again, my group will be sick of me, but how do we harmonize the interests of each of those goals, right? How do we do enough to achieve the goal of mobility through sidewalks while preserving the aesthetic and preserving the biodiversity and the natural infrastructure to accommodate that. So that's a perfect example of one of those challenges that we will have to navigate. I think the advice that we took in our breakout session was not to lose sight of the aspiration at this point in the process, right? And to make sure that ultimately the reconciliation of those tensions is going to be part of the work, but that we should be still adhering to the aspiration for what it is that we're looking for. So thanks, Chris. How about the Public Health Committee?
Hi, thanks, Lester. There were just two of us in subcommittee, and it was a chance for us to go through the goals and actions together, which we hadn't had a chance to do in advance. So that was useful. We did add another action that we'd like to see. And it's interesting in public health that when we started this program process, we were pre-COVID, and the COVID pandemic has put different strains and stresses on both physical health but particularly mental health, and the senior health is a priority in our group as well. So we discussed a little bit about emerging challenges that we might need to bring into the master plan now, and that some of the public health challenges that have emerged or become a lot more obvious during the COVID pandemic are not going to be going away when the pandemic goes away. So those are a couple of things we noticed. I don't know if we need to go in detail, but there were just a couple of action items we added. Our goals were pretty broad. Do you want me to follow on in terms of how our agenda might affect other agendas and other subcommittees? Are you handling that separately?
No, I'd love you to do that. In fact, I was going to ask that question. Did you come up with anything that you felt needed to be cross-pollinated into other areas of work?
Well, I did. I read through the brief document today and came up with suggestions for a lot of other groups. If you wanted me to go through them, but where there may be some creative tension is particularly with economic development, because some of the physical health promotion and mental, particularly, and primary prevention-oriented health policy can come in conflict with some of the ways economic development gets done. So I can mention that, out of the gate. We would probably, if we wanted to consider a positive public health promotion in all of our policies at the local level, we'd ask the economic development folks to consider health and wellness impacts of businesses when you choose the businesses that you try and support or incentivize. So that might mean steering away from businesses who profit from unhealthy product sales, and trying to make sure that you're supporting businesses that are adding to the social, emotional, physical, and mental health of community members. We suggest that the brand for Westborough begin to include positive health and wellness and environmental impacts of businesses on the community, that's part of the Westborough brand. When collaborating with property owners and businesses downtown, empower contributions to health and wellness in the community. And for economic development, when you're considering that retail mix downtown, recruit more health forward businesses that are enhancing community health and wellness. So it's interesting. We want a lot of little mom and pop shops. We want little, places to gather and eat. But we also tend to, for instance, focus a lot on microbrews. Well, is there healthy consumption of alcohol there, or are we supporting? COVID has also brought a spike in substance use disorders. There's a lot of excess drinking, there's a lot of excess drugging, and there's a lot of weight gain, ask anybody. So those are, can we try and incentivize businesses, enterprises, activities that are health positive, socially and emotionally, but aren't profiting from the kinds of products that hurt public health? There's a creative tension there to manage.
Great, thank you. That's an excellent example. And if you have other examples like that for the other subcommittees, I think we'd ask you to submit those through to those subcommittees or through the leadership team to those subcommittees for consideration. I think it might be really interesting to think about at the upcoming public hearing meeting, talking really to VHB about whether we might be able to, in addition to just polling for demographics and who's in the room, maybe what we should be asking people to do is make some choices or give us some, try to do some polling around how they value these conflicting or apparently conflicting ideas, and see if we've got a consensus around them. So
Yes, Lester, we can absolutely work with the committee to set up some polling to get some preliminary feedback. And also keep in mind, a few months from right now, when the committee and the community's vetted all of these ideas, we're also going to be asking for priorities in terms of short-term, midterm, long-term. So getting that initial feedback a couple of times, I think will be helpful on that front.
so are you, just to remind me, do we have budgeted another public survey that can be done?
I think that we can figure out a way to get some of that feedback back from the public as well, if
Because
not
I think
from the
in
committee.
both instances that we've heard now from Chris and from Jody, we have examples of desired outcomes or aspirations that have a consequence in choosing one over the other, right? So can we do some polling around, okay, you want sidewalks, are you willing to give up your stone wall that's in picturesque stone wall and the big tree in front of your house in order to have sidewalks, right? So these are, try to maybe begin to narrow people's opinions around what they're willing to give up in order to have something else would be, I think, some really interesting public surveying. So thank you very much, Jody. What do we have next? Kristen is scrolling madly here to find our place. Okay, natural, historic, and cultural resources. Who would like to speak on behalf of that subcommittee?
So I can give a report from our group. We were mostly sort of reorganizing, as you know, we don't have Lee anymore, but we possibly have Jenny or another cultural council member. And so we talked a bit about some of the cultural goals and a lot about some of the comments that Viggy had presented to us, and how we might incorporate those a bit more into our goals. We didn't really have anything firm that came out of it, just because this was sort of our first meeting really talking about some of the cultural stuff. So we'd like a chance to, review things a bit more, either as the three of us or, with someone from the cultural council at least, to really give us a better idea of, what we think the goals and actions should be.
Okay, great, Jen. Thanks very much. I will say, I don't know if your committee yet, and however it gets reconstituted, has studied the proposal from Luann Crosby and Christopher Noonan, but there's quite a lot embedded in that around cultural, and they're very vested in the downtown. So would encourage you to look at that as a data point, as well as obviously you've mentioned Viggy's work, but also the other feedback that we got. And I believe that our goal, Kristen, maybe you can confirm, the intention was to get the goals and tasks done, well, certainly in advance of the February 18th public meeting, but what were we setting as a deadline for sort of finalization, if you will, of the drafts that will be taken to the public hearing? Do we have a date on that?
I believe we were going to give a week after this meeting for people to finalize their goals so that VHB would still have time to incorporate it for the public meeting. But now that the meeting's the 18th, we might have a little more time. So I can follow up with everybody tomorrow once I touch base with them.
All right, Hazel, you raised your hand on that point, or?
No, I just wanted to comment on the natural, historic, and cultural resources thing. One of the things that, and this didn't get discussed in my committee, but one of the things I sort of have thought about is some sort of perhaps tax incentives to downtown small business owners to the storefront thing. We talk about this whole downtown area and how we're trying to make it historic. And I noticed that there was comment that we were looking more for a walking village so that the businesses which we were promoting in the village would be things that people would want to walk to and go in and out of, and were not offices. And so my question was whether in some way there were any sort of tax incentives you could look at that might encourage small businesses and also try to work more closely with the landlords of the particular buildings. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out to the, I don't know, the Natural Historic and Cultural Resource. I don't know where it goes, but maybe somewhere.
Well, it was certainly a predominant theme in the Land Use and Economic Development Subcommittee. So it's being given a lot of thought. So thank you very much for that. Okay, anyone else want to add to cultural, natural, historic? I'm not seeing any Zoom hands raised or anybody chiming in. Kristen, where do we go from here? All right, housing. Do we have someone to speak on behalf of housing?
I can do that. I think John
Kara.
stepped out. Yeah, so for the most part, we thought that these worked well. Will you scroll down, Kristen, just so I can look at goal 1? Thank you, the action steps under goal 1. Thanks. So for the most part, we were in support of most of them. Number 4, overall was confusing to us. And so while when we give our feedback, we'll try to be more explicit, we wanted to suggest that to a layperson reading this, it's hard to understand. We don't necessarily know from the way it's written what a performance standard is. The parenthetical that mentions energy conservation and open space protection seems to us to refer to performance standards and maybe better placed right there. But also we don't really understand the relationship between performance standards and variety of price points in housing. So I think we're not really sure what exactly this is saying. So wanting whomever wordsmith this to be more explicit in the meaning or give more examples of what this means. Otherwise, we might suggest kind of starting over with this. We're not quite sure what this is getting at. And then scrolling down to goal 3. Goal 2 looks good. We liked all of the action steps there. Goal 3, for both action steps, we just are going to suggest some wordsmithing to make them more actionable. Right now, they read more as suggestions. And so we're just going to talk about how to make that more explicit. And I'm sorry, I did forget one other thing under goal 1, which is about the housing trust. This was anticipating and hoping for a housing trust. And now that that has passed in town meeting, that is moot. And so instead we want to be replacing that with an action statement that is more about the nature of the relationship between the town and the housing trust. So we'll play with that. We did not have time to talk about how our input on any of the other goals.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback. So a couple of thoughts for you. Congratulations, first of all, on achieving the first goal of the master plan, right? The establishment of the housing trust. So really well done. I think I've said all along over the last year that the town isn't stopping doing what it's doing while we do this master plan, right? And I think that a lot of the great ideas that are being validated by this master plan, departments and the Board of Selectmen and others are already working on. So like Chris, the Complete Streets program, for example, is another perfect example of how we're moving on on progressing a means towards adding more sidewalks, et cetera. And so we've established this housing thing. So over the course of the next week, the rewriting of these goals is your prerogative, your subcommittee's prerogative, Kara. Some of the tasks have been garnered from the many instruments of feedback that we have been deploying over the course of the last year, right? So there might have been some of them with a particular interest in that one area that doesn't make particular sense to you. Ultimately, it's, you can decide what's presented, but I'm suspecting that maybe Jim Robbins or somebody else can create a bridge to whoever might be interested in that topic to help you craft that in a way that makes sense to your subcommittee and achieves the intention of the person making that, making
Yeah,
that
we
suggestion.
would very much welcome that, because there are elements of that action step that resonate, but putting it all together, we're just a little stuck. So yes, Jim or Jeffrey or anybody who looked at that, we welcome that input.
Yeah, we're happy to help. And I mean, this is really I think that we've been told repeatedly that this is an unusual master plan process in most of the towns that VHB works, that we have a committee of this size with this many committed people representing their particular interests. So bridging those interests and bringing them together in a cohesive way is one of the challenges of the Westborough master plan process. But I think ultimately it's going to result in a very robust document. So let's embrace that process. So thank you, Kara.
And Lester, I just piggyback on that, saying, like, I totally agree. It's your efforts here are going to make this document 10 times stronger. So we're really looking forward to that healthy debate about fine tuning these and wordsmithing it so it resonates with you as well. So looking forward to that.
Yes, and Kara, I hear your concern for that. So why don't your committee, which I think is John and Hazel and yourself, identify the ones that you're concerned about, and I will work with VHB to get you a more friendly explanation of those goals.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, we're moving on to open space and recreation.
Hi. So we had a good discussion, similar to the cultural group. I think the way she phrased it was really good. We took the opportunity to just kind of get reorganized. I think overall we feel comfortable with these goals, but we did want to take some more time to just read through them and make sure they encompass everything that we're hoping to achieve. I read through the Vicky's spreadsheet today, and there is definitely so much good feedback in there. On the active rec side, I think we were going to tweak a little bit to just maybe incorporate, the students had some good ideas about enhancing, we talk a lot about like new facilities, like an outdoor ice rink, a community center, and all that stuff is great, but maybe are there ways to enhance facilities that we already have? One suggestion was like a rope swing at Lake Chauncey, not that, but just maybe kind of think outside the box at making our facilities, a little bit better or updated. So that was one that stood out for me. So I think we're going to take the next week to really do some homework and go back and review these. But overall, it was a good discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I was also struck in reading the students' feedback that a lot of the ideas were re-echoed from other feedback that we'd had, right? And again, the fact that all of these subcommittees interlace and interlock is really important, right? So even there was a very specific reference to a specific parcel on Denny Street that was becoming available, and the students envisioned a place there where they might gather, and that might tie into the open space committee's desire to acquire land. And I don't know whether that's a parcel. I know Mark's had a vision for that over the years as well. And whether that's a reality now and it's happening now and it's achievable now, I don't know. But, a really important way that the different subcommittees intermesh. Anything else from open space?
I think that's it, unless Mark or Josh have anything. But
Mark, something to add? Josh?
That as Jess said, we're going to be actively meeting next week regarding where we are with respect to these goals, as well as the baseline. One thing that I think we had discussed a while back was how some of these open spaces can be created and in some certain cases be preserved. And my particular background, as I think a lot of you know, is representing developers, which to some extent sometimes can be seen as sort of anti-open space. And one of my comments initially, as being part of this subcommittee in representing those types of clients, was that my general feeling was that the open space relative to other similar communities, similar towns of a similar size that has a similar commercial base, was that the open space was a bit onerous, especially along our main commercial corridor along Route 9. So we've been talking tonight about sort of balancing between economic development and health and open space and bike trails, et cetera. And so I think our committee is working through that balance as well internally in terms of being able to balance continuing to be able to attract developers and spur economic development. And I've also been on the economic development committee in the town, so I've got that perspective too. While at the same time establishing and meeting all of these open space related goals that are on the screen before us now. I have seen in some other communities as well, in terms of raising funds with respect to the preservation of open space, different ways that I haven't really seen as much in Westborough. I know in Tewksbury and Somerville, Haverhill, they all have different means and mechanisms, either under their zoning ordinances and bylaws or their general ordinances and bylaws that essentially allow a developer to develop certain, usually large-scale developments in exchange for either granting open space or providing some type of an impact fee in connection with that. And I know that the town has done that on certain circumstances, but it seems to me that it's been a little bit more on an ad hoc basis. And I think that there's probably some opportunity to provide some mechanism that gets memorialized and codified within either our zoning bylaw or our general bylaw. So more to come on that, I suppose.
I thank you for that, Josh. And I was hoping that you would bring to this open space committee that perspective, having seen it, from the other side and from the development side, because I do believe that there are likely creative ways that could be built into our zoning or our bylaws or wherever it is appropriate to achieve, again, a harmonization of those interests, right? We did it with the TOV zoning, which allowed a density bonus in exchange for a sending parcel of open space. And it was that way that we got Freedom Park, Veterans Freedom Park, right in the heart of downtown, right? So it can be done. And we might really want to explore how we can do more that way. So perhaps providing density bonus in the commercial corridor in exchange for a more priority open space parcel that meets both the open space and recreation desires of the community. I think I was very excited this week as well to be sent an email and to see that the Hockomock Reuse Committee is reforming. And this, to me, making reference to an earlier comment too about using or incorporating sustainability and alternative energy into our consciousness and into our education. I think that the last time we considered the repurposing of that land, it's centered around the notion that this could be a multi-use site. It's quite possible to put on top of the capped landfills solar, but it might be possible then to integrate a learning station to that solar that demonstrates to students from a viewing platform what actually is being generated there, while they also continue to walk, through the open space around Hockomock Pond, partnering with Amazon to ensure that we have a loop trail around the pond, and that perhaps is fed tangentially by a bike and pedestrian path. So, I think we do still have some great opportunities to harmonize all of these interests and goals of both recreation, open space preservation, et cetera. So thank you for that, Josh.
Lester, can I jump in for a quick second on
Yes,
open
Don.
space?
Sure.
Two things. Josh's comment about density. When I was chair of Open Space Committee way too many years ago, we actually proposed, when the TDR was done, that the town put a transfer development rights on Route 9 because most of it's denser than what is actually now allowed by our zoning. And if people are going in and redeveloping, and we're saying, let's accept the fact that it's already dense, but if they want to redevelop, we give them a waiver every time. Let's give them a waiver if they want, but they should then give us something in the way of funding for open space on that. And the second thing is I have a minor correction to one of their action items, but it that is important, and that is on the BWALT, they dropped 2 communities, and those 2 communities actually give the town the opportunity to get 3 times as much money as we currently would have if we didn't have those communities in. So I'd like to add, we need to add Marlborough and Berlin to the list of communities.
Good catch. Thank you, Don, for that. We certainly don't want to give up any opportunity to secure outside funding for any of the aspirations of the master plan. So,
and this one actually also points out, because this, if we can get the connection to Berlin, it offers some wonderful economic development opportunities because we'd be on a major national tourist link, and encourage a lot of those small businesses we're talking about.
super. Excellent. Thank you very much for that comment. Another benefit of the group process. So thank you. All right, Kristen, what's next? Oh, did we go by public facilities? Did we skip one, or is this the next one? Public facilities, did I see that go by quickly in the shuffle?
I have sustainability and climate change next. Public facilities is last.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Who is going to speak on behalf of the Sustainability and Climate Change Group?
Pete should speak for us.
All right, Pete.
Well, I appreciate the chance. I had submitted some new goals and they were not reflected in this document. They were submitted a couple of weeks ago. So I'll give an overview, but I've also resent them back to the leadership, Downey and so forth. So the 4 goals are not dramatically different than this, but the first goal, which is focused on town municipal operations, is being recast consistent with the climate action plan and the state goals for the pathway to net zero for 2050, which is a statewide goal. The state has come out with a clean energy and climate plan for the next decade. And so this will be stating that we should be mitigating our greenhouse gas emissions community-wide. And underneath that is some of the same actions that were mentioned earlier, supplemented by some of the things that were in the state clean energy and climate plan that came out at the end of last year. The second goal in regard to waste management, the Department of Environmental Protection has established a statewide goal of a 30% reduction in municipal waste statewide. And so our recommendation is that we should reflect that goal in Westborough also and strive to achieve a 30% reduction in municipal waste through the programs that are discussed here, reduction and reuse and recycling and composting. There's a lot of exciting new things going on in composting in Westborough. The third goal was related to resiliency. Yes, resiliency. That was not dramatically changed. Some good work is going on in the MVP program. One part that I did add as an action was in regard to preservation of open space and trees as a carbon sequestration opportunity, which is complementary to both the state and local climate plans. The fourth goal is based again on community education. We have some specific ideas in regard to energy fairs and so forth. So I think the expression of this last one at the goal level hasn't changed. It's the actions underneath that were changed. I look forward to following up on that. And if you have any questions about the changes that were submitted, you can let me know. Jim, did you have more you wanted to add?
Thank you, Pete. Very good job. Thank you. One of the things that we talked about adding was under our fourth goal, which talked about community education, was taking advantage of the fact that the town has an Earth Day celebration and having an educational opportunity on that day where we educate families on climate change and what they can do in their homes, in the way they behave, either the energy consumption or recycling, composting, things like that, that they can do to improve and reduce their carbon footprint locally. We talk about trash cleanup every Earth Day, but if trash in a public realm begins at home, and if people understand their individual impact on the climate, we feel that they'll be less likely to impact the public realm with their kind of wastefulness. So that's my last comment on that.
Yeah, and let me add back to the high school, the school input. I thought there was some very good ideas there that have not yet kind of fully gotten reflected in our actions. We're going to review that, make sure that that's accommodated.
So thank you very much. And I know that Pete, you provided some feedback to the Economic Development Committee for consideration of giving voice to the Economic Development Subcommittee to give voice to and try to engage the town's Economic Development Committee to incorporate into the outreach work that it does with our businesses, the state clean energy and climate plan goals for 2050. So as the state puts out a plan and a community-wide goal, we now move from just sort of, our own sort of aspirational intentions to expectations that are being set at the state level. So we're happy to incorporate something in the Economic Development Subcommittee goals in that regard. I had one other comment, but I'll go to Gary because I see he has his hand raised. Gary?
Yeah, I just simply wanted to let Peter know that I had noticed his comment about carbon sequestration and open space, and I think we're going to need to discuss that a bit more. Certainly that's appropriate for forests that we intend to maintain as forests, but it may not be appropriate for all spaces. So we may need to modify that goal some.
Okay, great, thank you. And it was on that point actually that I had another comment, which is again, we see within these intentions and desires, there's sort of this perfect conflict there or tension that exists between, Chris, your example of the creation of sidewalks and the possibility of the need to cut down trees, right? So instead of maybe choosing between one or the other, do we have a tree replacement program that is part of the complete streets or the sidewalk program, that if we lose if we have to cut a certain number of trees, we need to find a parcel in which to plant a certain number of trees. But it might be one of the things to poll as well. How do we mitigate that, right? Trees and carbon sequestration versus sidewalks and pedestrian mobility and the reduction of using vehicles. Gary, you had another comment?
Yeah, so you may be able to answer this question for me. Peter's goal of carbon sequestration, it occurred to me that a place for that might actually have to do with land acquisition. And I know that there is a committee that's starting, which is prioritizing parcels for potential acquisition. And it may be that what we want to do is establish a goal to acquire properties to take not just out of the development pool, but also to maintain as forest, for example, not only for habitat, but also for the environment, as Peter suggests. So I wasn't exactly sure who to contact with that. I didn't know if there was somebody maybe within one of these subgroups that might be the appropriate place for that comment.
Well, it certainly seems appropriate to me to incorporate a goal around that in the natural resources subcommittee where you reside, and also reach out to open space for that, because as we've seen in the recent actions of town meeting, we've been taking exactly that kind of action. And the question has come, how do we take more and how do we fund more of that type of action? And so I was also pleased to see that there's an exploratory group looking at the, revisiting the CPA, the Community Preservation Act, but Josh has presented a possible mechanism to funding a pool that can be used to acquire land. So certainly if we don't have that somewhere in the goals, I would encourage you to reach out to either open space and or your own natural resources committee to craft a goal around that.
Lester, if I might, just to offer some thoughts for the committee to consider. Some communities we're realizing in Massachusetts have gone through the step of doing a tree inventory assessment, working closely with their DPW department. And when they do that, it's typically a GIS-based inventory. They understand the health of the tree, and they also document places where trees can be placed throughout their community as well, and come up with a long-term implementation plan in terms of the health, the maintenance, and also installing new trees with the ideas of everything that people have talked about as well. So that might be another action where towns are just starting to do that in terms of realizing that that's an asset and amenity that they kind of almost take for granted in terms of how do you maintain it and promote it and build upon it as well.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That's very interesting. And maybe we do create a task around that specifically. Chris, do you know of anything that the town of Westborough has done in that regard?
Nothing active right now, but it's definitely been part of the climate action plan discussions and sustainable Westborough efforts.
Okay, great. So maybe we can find a place to give voice to that in the tasks and actions section of natural resources and or open space. Thank you.
I'll jump in for a quick second here. We talk about trees for carbon sequestration, but there are actually ways to very efficiently, even in meadows and other things, as well as to do significant carbon sequestration. And that's been being ignored in some cases. And we need a mixture of wildlife habitat to be able to properly do things.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Don. Worth weaving into that goal or that action. Thanks very much. So just keeping an eye on time, it's 7:54. We want to wrap at 8. Where are we off to next? All right, economic development. Well, I'm sure you're sick of listening to me, so maybe one of my other subcommittee members would like to summarize what we did. Amber, are you willing to do that, or Christy? Or do you want me to run with it? Okay.
You want to fight me for it, Christy? I mean, I think Christy can go for it and we can help her out. I mean, she's done a great job so far, but either or.
Great.
Fine.
So we had a combination of the land use committee, subcommittee, and the economic development committee. So Christy, you want to give us a summary?
Sure. So in our group, we talked a lot about the downtown and the vision of the downtown as being, walkable and really attracting businesses that would promote that kind of use. So we talked about whether or not there should be zoning to bring specific types of businesses downtown, or if maybe that effort really belonged with the Economic Development Committee to really incentivize the types of businesses that we want downtown. We talked about some of the challenges being the sewer capacity related to residential, as well as putting restaurants downtown and adding grease traps, and that being, part of the go forward in terms of understanding sewer capacity and how we might be able to accommodate that in the downtown. The Economic Development Committee has talked about doing a business improvement district in the downtown, and really working with the existing businesses to encourage them to be a part of this vision, and get excited about moving forward, to really create a downtown area that people want to come to and spend some time walking around and really patronizing the businesses down there.
Great. Thank you very much. Did anybody else want to add anything from that group? How about from the land use team? Jim Ball?
Yeah, sure, Lester. I mean, I think the keys that came across here is trying to encourage versus limit. Be careful with zoning about limiting uses, particularly for existing business and existing landowners. And so, I wrote down bold versus balanced, encourage versus limit, and carrot versus stick. I think trying to figure out those kind of approaches versus forcing things on folks. And so I think to Christie's point, is it more of an economic development within the existing bylaws, or in this whole process of rewriting the bylaws? How do we add these things, or how do we add encouragement for sustainability? How do we add encouragement for certain types of businesses without specifically penalizing folks who have already invested there or have already done things there? And so, I think you mentioned reconciliation of tensions. That will be an ongoing process throughout this entire process. So that's all I would add.
Great, thank you very much. In the interest of time, we'll move along. But as we really got to benefit in this breakout group from having two different subcommittees that might have some tensions to discuss, and we might think about the next Master Plan Advisory Committee meeting using this format again with the breakout rooms, but maybe we pair up subcommittees so we can address some of these tensions. Land use, we've done land use, so let's move on to the next one. Kristen, we had land use and economic development committee together, and
I don't think you've done public facilities.
that's what was missed. Yeah. All right, so while Kristen looks for public facilities, who on public facilities would like to step up?
Well, I am public facilities, so me.
Well, welcome, Lisa. Go for it.
And no pressure to be quick because it's past 8 o'clock, but
You're okay.
So instead, I would encourage everyone, if they want, to read our section or my section, and feel free to comment. This area is I'm so involved with it on a daily basis. Sometimes it's hard to see what more generalized. So any comments would be great. And I mean, I know water and sewer and drainage work is not exciting to most people, but if you have anything, I'd be happy to hear it. I'll just bring up the two things that that I was struggling with was one is how specific should we get? I've noticed, we could, on the public facilities, I tried to keep it really general, like a community center from multiple ages. But then as I went through Viggy's comments, there were really good ideas that were, but very specific. So do you keep it generalized, or is it good to get that specific? That was the one thing. And then I'll just throw out the other thing is I had a colleague take a look at my list, and one of their comments to me was like, wow, that's great stuff, but oh my God, this is gonna cost so much money. Is that, so cost really, we don't really look at that as part of this process, or does that come later? Or is this just the master plans mainly are wish list if we had all the money in the world?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a question in the back of everybody's minds, but we are still in that exploration phase, and I think that we want to be aspirational, right? We want not to put obstacles in front of what we hope and dream for the town, but when we get into the commits phase, we will have to commit to certain achievable tasks. You know, one of the biggest tasks that will come out of this is how do we afford it? But there are numerous creative ways that can be identified in engaging the aspiration that can ultimately contribute to affording it, right? So the Complete Streets program is another great example. Chris, how do we afford the Complete Streets program? What do we get?
We don't get anything right now.
What could we get if we do the right things?
We can seek grant money, but it's probably a one-time shot, and then you've exhausted it. So it's really going to come down to our priorities.
Well, it's a less than rosy view of it, but there is grant money, right? So my point being that there are ways to fund achieving or getting a ball rolling, right? That we can explore. And so we shouldn't today look for obstacles or reasons not to do something. We should be aspirational, and then we should look for ways for achieving that. Or we'll just turn it all over to Christy and she'll figure it out for us.
I have a comment.
So thank you. It's a great question. I think, Lisa, obviously, if you need some collaboration, reach out to folks. You shouldn't be a subcommittee of one. And anybody who has any input for her, please get that to her and take that instruction in general. I know many of you have now read everybody else's goals and you've got notes. Share those notes. Ask the other subcommittees to include them. By doing so, remember, we are not committing to these goals tonight, right? We're going to put these goals in front of everybody at that public meeting on February 18th, and we're going to ask for our community to help us to hone and finalize these goals and tasks. And then from there, we'll move into the commits stage where we start to put specific actions in place. So that brings me to the conclusion, which is that February 18th, we have a public meeting scheduled. We need to promote that. We want as many people at that as possible. We will be sharing with you, if we haven't already, I think Kristen shared today, the engagement and ambassador spreadsheet. Please take a look at that and remind yourself where you committed to reach out, and look at the areas that don't have an ambassador and sign up for one, and let us know what you've signed up for. And if you end up doubling up with somebody, even better. But let's find every way possible to get the word out and get as many people there as we can. That has got to be the biggest commitment we make as advisory committee members, is to ensure that we get the broadest, most diverse, and biggest audience we can on February 18th. And so with that, I will thank you all again for showing up tonight, for engaging this new process, enjoying the breakout meetings, and for the outstanding feedback. And we look forward to being in touch with you via email between now and February 18th.
Thank you, Lester.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Kenzie.
More of that.